Well, good evening, folks, and welcome to our Wednesday night update here at First Presbyterian Church, coming to you from our little YouTube studio here on the second Wednesday of Lent. Good to see several of you with us online at the moment, commenting. If you do post a comment, I'll try and acknowledge your presence with us this evening. Meg, I'm glad to have you with us. I hope your week's been going smoothly. I think I say that every week, but I really do mean that I hope you're having a great week. Dale, it's good to have you here with us this evening, and also hope your week has been going well for you. Kathy, good to have you and Rich with us. You guys have been faithful every week, and it's always good to see that at least somebody reads what I write in the newsletter. So appreciate that. We are still requiring masks in the building. Session will be meeting next Tuesday, and that will be one of the topics of conversation as to whether it's the right time to remove masks and start moving back towards something a little more normal for us, or what we used to consider normal anyway as a community of faith here at First Presbyterian Church. Also, we do still have the soup fundraiser, soup and pizza fundraiser going on. Orders can be placed up through March 28th, and you can order quarts of soup and take and bake pizzas for approximately $15 each. And for each item purchased, 25% of that will go to the White Bear Area Food Shelf. I believe we had soup and pizzas delivered to our house this afternoon, so I'm looking forward to trying those. I don't think we managed to order any last time we did this. There's a just honest confession from the pastor, but we are looking forward to them, and we've heard great things about how good they taste. On the downside of things, this coming Sunday is the start of daylight savings time. The negative, of course, there is that we lose an hour of sleep Saturday night. But the positive, at least if you're like me, the positive is we gain an hour of light in the evening. So, all of a sudden it's going to be much lighter in the evening. And I love that because I am not a morning person in any way, shape, or form. Give me the evenings into the night ahead of an early morning start anytime, and I'm happy. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's how I think. In terms of prayer requests, we've been praying for Jim Smith for a while now, as he's been in Regents Hospital being evaluated and trying to get medication sorted out for him. Jim has now moved to a VA facility in Roseville where he is now on hospice care. It is long-term hospice care at this time, and so we want to continue to keep Jim and June in prayer as Jim transitions into a new facility and makes the adjustments that he needs to make to his new residence there. And obviously our continued prayers with Rita Garenbeck's son David and the diplomatic corps that are working in the Ukraine at the moment. Not just the United States folks, but those from around the world that are trying to bring an end to the violence there. I mean, obviously we want to be praying for peace, that hard hearts would be softened, that love and grace would triumph over violence and the devastation that's taking place there. I could not believe what I read today, that a maternity and children's hospital had been bombed by the Russians, and that there were kids that were killed in that attack. It wasn't even an empty facility. What kind of hard heart does it take to attack and blow up a place that has pregnant, expecting mothers, newborn infants, and children in it? It boggles the mind. And yet we've seen it over and over and over again in the history of humanity. I think that's why it's so important for us as followers of Jesus Christ to make sure that we are sharing a message of grace, a message of hope, a message of mercy, a message that says that everybody is born and created in the image of God. It doesn't matter what nation of the earth you live on. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. You are created in the image of God, and as such, we should not be destroying God's image bearers on this planet. And it's sickening to hear some of the church leaders in Russia, condone the attacks that are taking place, because that is not of God. It is not of Christ. Nationalism is never related to the Christian faith. And it's not just in Ukraine. We're seeing violence in the Cameroon, as we've been praying for several years now, as the Francophiles and Anglophile communities there are doing battle with one another. Sometimes I think we look at the world and we think, gosh, what can I do? And the answer sometimes is not a lot. Sometimes all we can do is pray. But God's placed each of us in a particular spot at a particular time for a particular reason. And we all encounter other people. And the great question is, are we taking God's grace with us into our workplace environment? Are we speaking up instead of remaining silent when conversations are perhaps going in a direction that we feel might be awkward or difficult for us to speak? But we need to speak the grace of Christ into it. We need to speak the hope of God into that. We need to stand up for the image of God in everybody else. Anyway, that's not my thought for the day. And good evening to you, Len, as well. As we announced, during Lent, we would be taking a look at the book of James. And we're still in the first chapter of James, and just reading the last part of that first chapter of James, beginning at verse 19. And as a pastor, as someone who has studied theology, I often feel like I need to sit down and read commentaries to understand what's going on in a text, and then give comment on that. That's really what we do in the sermon every week, is we expound upon the text that's there to try to help it bring meaning and sense to our lives. One of the beautiful things about the book of James is it is so abundantly straightforward that it really doesn't need much added to it in terms of a sermon or an exposition. So, Len, before you post some kind of funny comment about that on the feed, I know not every sermon has to be a long one. It's true. So I really just want to read to you these verses from James and let them wash over you. And think about what James is saying. And I'm going to be reading from Eugene Peterson's translation, The Message. And again, if you've got a Bible in front of you, maybe you want to follow along. But just beginning here in verse 19 of chapter 1. Post this at all the intersections, dear friends. Lead with your ears. Follow up with your tongue. And let anger straggle along in the rear. God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger. So throw all spoiled virtue and cancerous evil in the garbage. In simple humility, let our gardener, God, landscape you with the word, making a salvation garden of your life. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you are a listener when you are anything but. Letting the word go in one ear and out the other. Act on what you hear. Those who hear and don't act are like those who glance in a mirror, walk away, and then 2 minutes later have no idea who they are or what they look like. But whoever catches a glimpse of the revealed counsel of God, the free life, even out of the corner of his eye, and sticks with it, is not a distracted scatterbrain, but a man or woman of action. That person will find delight and affirmation in the action. Anyone who sets themselves up as religious by talking a good game is self-deceived. This kind of religion is hot air, and only hot air. Real religion, the kind that passes muster before God, is this. Are you ready for it? Reach out to the homeless and loveless in their plight, and guard against corruption from the godless world. Folks, it couldn't be any more straightforward. Love people. Do right by them. Care for the poor. Care for the orphan. Care for the refugee. Don't pretend that you're religious but don't do anything. You don't do anything, you haven't got anything to go with. How simple is it? Act. Reach out to the homeless and loveless in their plight, and guard against corruption from this godless world. I got nothing to add to what James says tonight. I really don't. Folks, let's just live out our faith. Let's learn to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, so that we might love our neighbor as ourselves. It's so easy that it's difficult. Have a fabulous rest of the week. God bless you, beautiful human beings who bear the image of God. And I'll see you all on Sunday.